The rainy season had finally arrived. Soft drops tapped against the zinc roof of Mama Grace's house as she sat on the veranda shelling groundnuts into a small bowl. The air smelled fresh,
Clean.
peaceful. For the first time in many weeks, her mind felt light. The bank incident had become a story many people knew, but she no longer wanted to think about it. She was tired of hearing people call her the chairman's mother. Before she was anybody's mother, she was Grace. A woman who had survived hardship. A woman who had known hunger. A woman who had learned that respect was more valuable than money. She smiled as she watched neighborhood children run through puddles, laughing as if the world contained no worries at all. The sound of an engine interrupted her thoughts. A black vehicle stopped in front of her gate. Mama Grace sighed. Another visitor. Ever since the bank incident became known, people had been visiting constantly. Some came to thank her. Some came to ask for help. Others came simply because they were curious. The door opened. A woman stepped out. She looked nervous. Very nervous. Mama Grace immediately noticed the child holding her hand. The boy couldn't have been older than 10. His clothes were neat but worn. The woman approached slowly. "Good afternoon, Mama. Good afternoon, my daughter." The woman hesitated. "May I speak with you?" Mama Grace pointed toward an empty chair. "Sit down." The woman sat. The little boy stayed, close beside her. For several moments nobody spoke. Then Mama Grace noticed tears gathering in the woman's eyes. "My daughter," she said gently, "what is troubling you?" The woman lowered her head. "Mama, I don't know where else to go." Mama Grace placed the bowl of groundnuts aside. She had heard those words many times in her life. Usually, they came from someone carrying a burden too heavy to carry alone. What happened? The woman took a deep breath. "My name is Esther." Mama Grace nodded. "I work as a cleaner." "There is honor in honest work." Esther smiled weakly. "Thank you, Mama." She wiped her eyes. "My husband died 3 years ago." The smile disappeared. "I have been raising my son alone." The little boy looked down at his shoes. Mama Grace's heart tightened. She understood that kind of struggle. More than most people knew. Esther continued. "Last month I applied for a small business loan." "A loan?" "Yes." "What business?" "I make and sell local soap." Mama Grace nodded approvingly. "Good." The business was growing. Esther swallowed hard. "I needed money to buy more materials." "What happened?" "The officer handling my application kept delaying it." Mama Grace listened carefully. "He said my documents were incomplete." "Were they?"
No.
"He said my guarantors were not acceptable." "Were they?" "Yes." Mama Grace leaned forward. "Then why was he delaying you?" The woman laughed bitterly. "Because every time I went there, someone else who looked richer was attended to first." The words hung in the air. Heavy, painful, familiar. A memory flashed through Mama Grace's mind. Sandra's face. The laughter. The insults. The judgment. She pushed the memory aside. "Continue." "The officer eventually told me something." "What?" Esther hesitated. Then she spoke quietly. "He told me poor people should stop dreaming big." Silence. Even the rain seemed quieter. Mama Grace stared at her. "He said that?" "Yes." The woman nodded. "He said some people were born to stay where they are." The little boy looked away. Embarrassed. Ashamed. As if the words had wounded him too. Mama Grace's jaw tightened. Not with anger. With sadness. Because she knew those words would remain in that child's memory for years. Children remembered cruelty. Especially when it was directed at their parents. "What happened after that?" "I left." "And the loan?" "I never got it." The woman's voice cracked. "My business is dying." Mama Grace looked at the little boy. "What is your name?" "Samuel." "How old are you?" 10. "You help your mother?" "Yes, Mama." "What do you want to become when you grow up?" The boy answered immediately. "A doctor." No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just confidence. Mama Grace smiled. "A doctor?" "Yes." "Why?" The boy's face became serious. "Because doctors helped my father before he died." The answer struck her heart. Children carried stories adults rarely saw. Mama Grace looked at Esther again. Why did you come to me? The woman took a deep breath. Because people said you understand. Understand what? What it feels like when nobody listens. The rain continued falling. For a long moment Mama Grace said nothing. Because the woman was right.
She did understand.
Very well. Finally she spoke. My daughter. Yes, Mama? You did not come here by mistake. Esther blinked. I didn't.
No.
Mama Grace smiled softly. Sometimes God allows pain to introduce people who need each other. The woman began crying. Not loudly. Just enough to release some of the weight she had been carrying. Mama Grace waited patiently. When the tears slowed, she stood. Come. Where? Inside. The woman looked confused. Mama Grace smiled. You are not leaving hungry. Later that evening Daniel arrived. He found his mother and her visitors eating together. The sight made him smile. Mommy, Daniel. The little boy immediately stood. His eyes widened. He recognized him. Many people did now. Daniel shook his hand. What is your name? Samuel. Good to meet you, Samuel. The boy grinned. Daniel sat beside his mother. After introductions, Esther explained everything. The delayed loan, the insults, the humiliation. Daniel listened quietly. When she finished, he leaned back. What institution was this? Esther named the company. Daniel frowned. Not because he wanted revenge. Because he was beginning to see a pattern. The bank had not been an isolated problem. Many organizations had forgotten something important.
People.
Human beings. Too many places measured value through appearance. Too many people confused wealth with worth. When Esther finished speaking, Daniel nodded. We'll look into it. The woman immediately shook her head.
No.
No. I didn't come asking for favors. Mama Grace smiled. Good answer. Esther looked embarrassed. I only wanted someone to hear me. Daniel looked at his mother. Mama Grace looked back. Neither spoke. But they understood each other perfectly. That was exactly how the bank story had begun. With a woman who simply wanted someone to listen. Daniel turned back toward Esther. Then thank you for sharing your story. The woman smiled.
A real smile this time.
Not one weighted by sadness. For the first time that day, she looked hopeful. Weeks passed. The reforms Daniel introduced continued spreading across the bank. Every branch received new training. Customer complaints were reviewed carefully. Mystery evaluations were conducted. Staff members were monitored. Not to punish, to improve. The results slowly began appearing. One afternoon, Daniel sat reviewing reports with his executive team. Mrs. Nwosu entered carrying a folder. Sir. Yes. The latest audit. Daniel accepted it. What does it show? She smiled. Complaints have dropped significantly. Good. Customer satisfaction has improved. Good. She hesitated. There is something else. What? Employees are reporting positive changes too. Daniel looked surprised. Employees? Yes. She opened the folder. Many staff members say customers are treating them better as well. Daniel blinked. He hadn't expected that. Mrs. Nwosu continued. It seems respect is contagious. The room became quiet. Then Daniel smiled. His mother would like that sentence. Respect is contagious. Perhaps kindness worked the same way. Perhaps cruelty did too. Maybe people simply copied what they saw. The culture of an organization became the culture of its people. And the culture of its people eventually shaped everyone who entered. Daniel looked out the window. For years they had focused on profits, targets, numbers,
growth.
All important things. But numbers alone could not build trust. People built trust. And people destroyed it. The lesson seemed obvious now. Yet many institutions never learned it. Across town, Sandra sat inside a small classroom. The room contained 20 adults. All unemployed. All attending a professional development program. Sandra stared at her notebook. Her life looked very different now. The bank job was gone. The salary was gone. The status was gone. For weeks she had been angry. Angry at Daniel. Angry at Mama Grace. Angry at herself. Mostly herself. Because deep down she knew the truth. Nobody had forced her to mock an old woman. Nobody had forced her to laugh. Nobody had forced her to judge. Those decisions had been hers. The instructor entered. "Today," he announced, "we will discuss customer relations." Several people groaned. Sandra almost laughed. The irony was painful. The instructor wrote a sentence on the board. "Every customer wants to feel seen." Sandra stared at the words.
Seen.
That was the exact thing she had denied Mama Grace. Not money, not service. Recognition. Human dignity. The instructor continued speaking, but Sandra barely heard him, because for the first time, she truly understood what she had lost. Not her job, her character. And rebuilding character was harder than finding employment. Much harder. That same evening, Musa stood outside a small neighborhood pharmacy. He had recently found temporary work unloading deliveries. The pay was low, the hours were long, but he was grateful. As he carried boxes toward the entrance, he noticed an elderly man struggling with a heavy bag. Without thinking, Musa walked over. "Papa, let me help you." The man smiled. "Thank you." Musa carried the bag. The old man blessed him repeatedly.
Such a simple thing.
A small act, yet it stayed with Musa all evening, because months earlier he might have ignored the man, or told himself he was too busy, just as he had ignored Mama Grace's dignity while following orders. He remembered Daniel's words. "Your uniform is not for oppressing people. It is for protecting them." The sentence still followed him. Every day. Perhaps that was not a punishment. Perhaps it was a lesson. Meanwhile, Mama Grace continued living quietly, but people kept coming. Widows, traders, drivers, teachers, market women, retired workers, young people, old people. Some needed advice. Some needed encouragement. Some simply needed someone to listen. One afternoon, Daniel visited unexpectedly. He found 5 visitors sitting under the mango tree. His mother was speaking to them. Not as a wealthy woman. Not as the chairman's mother. Simply as Grace. A human being talking to other human beings. Daniel waited until everyone left. Then he sat beside her. "You are becoming very popular." Mama Grace laughed. "I am becoming very tired." They both smiled. The afternoon breeze moved gently through the trees. After a moment, Daniel spoke. "Do you ever wish none of this happened?" His mother thought carefully. Then she answered.
No.
"No." "It hurt." Daniel nodded. "Yes." "It embarrassed me." "Yes." "It revealed ugly things." "Yes." She looked at him. "But look what happened afterward." Daniel remained silent. She continued. "People are speaking." "True." "People are listening." "True." "People are changing." Daniel smiled. Slowly. "That is how real change works." The sun began setting. Golden light spread across the yard. Mama Grace leaned back. "My son." "Yes, Mommy?" "Do you know what surprised me most?"
What?
"The money." Daniel laughed. "The 100 million?" "Yes." She shook her head. All that trouble because people could not imagine an old woman having money. Daniel smiled. They judged what they saw and missed what they couldn't see. The two sat quietly for a moment. Then Mama Grace spoke again. "The greatest mistake people make is believing they understand someone's value after one glance." Daniel nodded slowly. That sentence felt important. Important enough to remember. Important enough to build an institution around. Important enough to guide a life. The evening call to prayer echoed faintly across the neighborhood. Peaceful. Gentle. Mama Grace stood. "Come inside."
Why?
"There is food." Daniel laughed. "Everything returns to food with you. Because hungry people become difficult. Chairman too. Especially Chairman." They both laughed. And as they walked toward the house together, neither knew how many more lives would be touched by a single lesson that had begun with an old woman, a simple check, and a refusal to accept humiliation as normal. The story was no longer about a bank. It was becoming something much bigger. A reminder. A warning. And, perhaps most importantly, a beginning. The following week brought an unexpected challenge. Not to the bank. Not to Daniel. but to Mama Grace, it began on a Tuesday morning. The sky was bright. Birds chirped from the mango tree outside her house. Everything seemed ordinary. Mama Grace had just finished sweeping the compound when a young woman entered through the gate. She looked frightened, almost desperate. Mama Grace? Yes, my daughter. The woman folded her hands. Please help me. Mama Grace immediately invited her to sit. The young woman's name was Ada. She was 23 years old, a recent university graduate, the first person in her family to attend university, the pride of her village. At least she had been. Now she looked broken. What happened? Mama Grace asked gently. Ada stared at the ground. I got a job. That is good news. It was. The answer worried Mama Grace. What happened after that? The young woman swallowed. The manager asked me to do something.
What?
When I refused, he began making my work difficult. Mama Grace listened carefully. He stopped approving my reports. He ignored my ideas. He gave opportunities to other people. The pain in her voice was obvious. Did you report him? Yes. What happened? Ada laughed bitterly. They told me he is an important man. Mama Grace sighed. The sentence sounded familiar. Too familiar. Important man. Important customer. Important family. Important title. People often used importance as an excuse. An excuse to ignore wrongdoing. An excuse to silence complaints. An excuse to protect power. What do you want me to do? Mama Grace asked. Ada looked embarrassed. Honestly, yes. I don't know. The honesty touched Mama Grace. Many people arrived asking for miracles. This girl was simply lost. My daughter. Yes, Mama? You cannot build a future by surrendering your dignity. Ada's eyes filled with tears. But what if I lose my job? Mama Grace smiled sadly. What if you lose yourself? The young woman became silent. Sometimes the hardest questions had no immediate answers. That evening Daniel arrived. His mother told him everything. He listened quietly. When she finished, he rubbed his forehead. It never ends.
No.
It is everywhere. Yes. Daniel leaned back. The realization bothered him. He had spent weeks fixing problems inside the bank. Yet the same behavior existed everywhere else. Different buildings. Different uniforms. Different companies. Same attitude. The belief that power gave people permission to mistreat others. Mommy. Yes. Why do people become like this? She smiled. Become like what? Cruel. Mama Grace thought for a moment. Then she answered. Most people do not become cruel suddenly. Daniel waited. They become comfortable. Comfortable. Comfortable ignoring pain that does not belong to them. The words settled heavily in the room. Comfortable. Perhaps that was true. Most injustice did not begin with evil. It began with indifference. People saw suffering, then looked away, again and again, until looking away became normal. 3 days later, Daniel experienced something unexpected himself. For the first time in years, he decided to visit one of the smaller branches without announcing his arrival. No security convoy. No official vehicle. No assistants. Just simple clothes. Simple shoes. A plain cap. He wanted to observe. To see what happened when nobody knew who he was. The branch was located in a busy part of the city. Customers filled the waiting area. Daniel entered quietly. Nobody recognized him. Exactly as planned. He joined the queue and waited. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. 30 minutes. He watched everything carefully. Most employees were respectful, professional, helpful. The reforms were working. Then something caught his attention. An elderly man approached the information desk. His hands trembled slightly. Please, the man said softly, I need help understanding this form. The employee glanced at him, then pointed toward another counter. Go there. The man shuffled over. The second employee pointed elsewhere. The third employee did the same. Back and forth. Back and forth. Like a football. Nobody shouted at him. Nobody insulted him. Yet nobody helped him either. Daniel watched for almost 20 minutes. Finally he stood.
He approached the old man.
Papa. Yes. May I see the form? The man handed it over. Daniel looked. The issue was simple. Very simple. Less than 2 minutes of explanation. That was all the man needed. 2 minutes. After helping him, Daniel watched the old man's face brighten. The relief was immediate. God bless you. Daniel smiled. The old man left. But Daniel remained thoughtful. Because he had learned something important. Disrespect was not always loud. Sometimes it was quiet. Sometimes nobody insulted you. Nobody mocked you. Nobody pushed you. They simply refused to care. And the result felt almost the same. That evening Daniel called a meeting. Senior executives gathered around the conference table. Everyone expected a discussion about profits, or growth, or strategy. Instead, Daniel began with a question. How long should it take to help a confused customer understand a form? The room became silent. Nobody knew where the conversation was going. Sir? Daniel repeated the question. How long? One executive answered. Perhaps 2 minutes. Daniel nodded. Correct. Then he told them what he had witnessed. The room listened carefully. When he finished, one executive frowned. But technically nobody did anything wrong. Daniel looked at him. Exactly. The room grew quiet again. That is why it is dangerous. Nobody had violated policy. Nobody had broken a rule. Yet the customer had still been neglected. Daniel leaned forward. If our standards only prevent cruelty, they are not high enough. The executives listened closely. We should not aim merely to avoid hurting people. He paused. We should aim to help them. The difference seemed small. But it wasn't. Not at all. Meanwhile, life remained difficult for Sandra. Job applications disappeared into silence. Interviews led nowhere. Rejection followed rejection. Some employers recognized her name. Others discovered the bank incident during background checks. Every setback reminded her of her mistake. One afternoon, she sat alone inside a small restaurant. A notebook lay open in front of her. She had begun writing lessons she never wanted to forget. The list was growing longer. Never judge appearance. Listen before deciding. Respect is free. Humiliation lasts longer than you think. She stared at the final sentence, then added another. Power reveals character. Not wealth. Not education. Not status. Character. As she finished writing, an elderly woman entered the restaurant. The woman struggled to carry a tray. Without thinking, Sandra stood. Let me help you. The woman smiled gratefully. A simple moment. Yet Sandra noticed something. Helping people felt better than looking down on them. Much better. Perhaps that was how change began. Not with speeches. With choices. Small choices repeated every day. Across town, Musa faced his own test. Business was slow at the pharmacy. The owner had become frustrated. One afternoon, a young delivery worker accidentally dropped several boxes. Products scattered everywhere. The owner exploded with anger. Can't you do anything right? The young worker lowered his head. I'm sorry. Sorry won't pay for this. The owner continued shouting. Customers watched silently. The young man's hands shook. Musa remembered another day. Another crowd. Another humiliation. Mama Grace on the bank floor. People watching. Nobody speaking. His stomach tightened. Then he did something he would not have done months earlier. Sir. The owner turned. What? It was an accident. The owner frowned. So. We can clean it up. The room became quiet. Nobody expected Musa to speak. The owner stared at him. For several uncomfortable seconds, nobody moved. Then an elderly customer nodded. He's right. Another customer agreed. Soon people were helping gather the fallen products. The crisis ended.
Just like that.
The delivery worker looked at Musa afterward. Thank you. Musa smiled. No problem. But deep inside, he understood something. Silence had nearly made him part of another humiliation. Again. This time he had chosen differently. One Sunday afternoon, Mama Grace organized something unusual. Nothing formal. Nothing expensive. Just chairs beneath the mango tree. Neighbors arrived. Traders arrived. Drivers arrived. Teachers arrived. Young people arrived. Old people arrived. Even Daniel came. The gathering wasn't about money, or politics, or business. It was about stories. Mama Grace stood. My children. Everyone became quiet. I want us to talk. A few people smiled. Talking was one thing Mama Grace did very well. She continued. Not about success. Not about failure. Not about who is rich. Not about who is poor. People exchanged curious looks. Today I want us to talk about dignity. The crowd became attentive. One by one, people began sharing experiences. A widow spoke about being ignored after her husband died. A driver described being treated differently depending on whether he wore his uniform. A teacher explained how some parents respected wealthy educators more than dedicated ones. Story after story emerged. Different faces. Different circumstances. Same lesson. People wanted to be seen. To matter. To be treated as human beings. Nothing more. Nothing less. Daniel listened quietly. The stories affected him deeply. Because many of these people were not asking for money. Not asking for favors. Not asking for special treatment. They were asking for basic respect. Something that should have cost nothing. Yet somehow remained rare. When the gathering ended, an elderly man approached Daniel. Sir. Yes. I want to thank you. Daniel smiled. For what? The old man pointed toward Mama Grace. For listening to her. Daniel looked at his mother. The old man continued. Many successful people stop listening once life becomes comfortable. Daniel remained silent. The man wasn't finished. But your mother still listens. He smiled. Protect that. Then he walked away. Daniel stood there for a long time, thinking. Because the man was right. Success could create distance. Distance created blindness. And blindness often created arrogance. Perhaps that was why Mama Grace remained different. She never stopped listening. That night Daniel sat alone on the veranda. The neighborhood was quiet. Most people had gone home. Inside the house, Mama Grace washed dishes. Daniel stared into the darkness, thinking, reflecting, learning. His mother stepped outside. You are thinking again. Daniel laughed. How do you always know? Because your serious face looks like somebody calculating mathematics. They both smiled. She sat beside him. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Daniel asked a question. Mommy? Yes. What if all this disappears? What? The improvements. The changes. The lessons. What if people eventually forget? Mama Grace looked at the stars. Then she smiled. Some will forget. Daniel frowned. That doesn't sound encouraging. She laughed softly. It is reality. He waited. Not everybody learns permanently. True. Not everybody changes permanently. True. So, what is the point? Mama Grace looked directly at him. The point is the people who do. Daniel considered that. She continued. If one person becomes kinder, that matters. If one worker learns respect, that matters. If one customer leaves with dignity, that matters. The night breeze moved gently through the trees. Mama Grace leaned back. My son. Yes. Never measure goodness only by how much of it survives. Daniel listened carefully. Measure it also by how many lives it touches. The words settled into his heart, deeply, because they felt true, very true. The world changed slowly, painfully slowly, but it changed. One person, one choice, one lesson, one act of kindness at a time. The same way cruelty spread, the same way respect spread, the same way a single old woman's humiliation had become a movement far larger than anyone expected. And somewhere in the city, people who had never met Mama Grace were already beginning to treat others differently. Not because they feared punishment, not because they knew the chairman, but because a lesson had reached them. A lesson about dignity. A lesson about humanity. A lesson about seeing people before judging them. And the weight of that lesson was becoming heavier than the weight of any title, even the title of chairman. Several months passed. The excitement surrounding the bank incident gradually faded. New stories replaced old ones. New headlines appeared. New conversations captured people's attention. That was how life worked. People moved on. The world rarely stayed focused on one lesson forever. But Daniel had not forgotten. Neither had Mama Grace. And neither had many of the people whose lives had been touched by what happened. One Monday morning, Daniel stood before a large screen in the headquarters conference room. A detailed report filled the display. Branch performance, customer satisfaction, employee evaluations, complaint records. Everything appeared strong. In many ways, stronger than ever. Yet Daniel's expression remained thoughtful. His assistant Bello noticed. "Sir?" "Yes." "You don't seem satisfied." Daniel smiled slightly. "I am satisfied."
But
Daniel looked at the report again. "Numbers can tell you what is happening." Bello nodded. "Yes, sir. But they cannot always tell you why." The assistant remained quiet. Daniel continued. "People behave differently when they know they are being watched." A slow understanding crossed Bello's face. "You think some staff members are only following the rules because they know management is monitoring them?" Daniel folded his arms. "I think human beings are human beings." Bello laughed. That sounded exactly like something Mama Grace would say. Daniel smiled. "Perhaps it did." "Then what do we do?" "We find out who people are when nobody is watching." The answer arrived sooner than expected. 3 days later, heavy rain struck the city. Roads flooded. Traffic slowed to a crawl. Many businesses closed early. Inside one of the bank branches, employees prepared to leave. The weather had been terrible all day. Everyone wanted to get home. Then the doors opened. An elderly man entered. His clothes were soaked. Water dripped from his sleeves. His shoes squished against the floor. The security guard glanced at the clock. Closing time. Technically, the branch was already shutting down. The old man looked exhausted. "Please." His voice trembled. "I need help." Several employees exchanged looks. Nobody wanted extra delays. The weather was bad. The roads were dangerous. Everyone had families waiting. The old man held out a small envelope. "My pension." One employee sighed quietly. Another checked the clock again. Then something unexpected happened. A young customer service representative stood up. "Papa, come and sit." The old man looked surprised. The employee smiled. "You are soaked." "I am sorry." "No need." The young man pulled a chair forward. "Let us help you." The transaction took 15 minutes. That was all. 15 minutes. When it was finished, the elderly customer smiled. A tired smile, but a grateful one. "Thank you." The young employee nodded. "Travel safely." The old man left. The branch finally closed. Nobody realized a hidden evaluator had been present all afternoon. Nobody knew the entire interaction had been documented. Nobody knew the report would reach Daniel's desk the following morning. When Daniel read it, he smiled. Not because of policy compliance. Not because procedures were followed. Because kindness had appeared when it was inconvenient. That was different. Much different. Meanwhile, Mama Grace continued her quiet routine. Morning prayers, housework, visitors,
advice,
groundnuts. Life remained simple. One afternoon, she visited the local market. The market was crowded. Voices filled the air. Traders called to customers. Children ran between stalls. Women bargained passionately. The familiar energy made her smile. As she purchased vegetables, she noticed an argument nearby. A young woman stood beside a fruit stall. Tears filled her eyes. An older trader pointed angrily. "You broke it." "I didn't." "You touched it." "I only picked it up."
People gathered,
watching, whispering. Nobody intervened. Mama Grace moved closer. The situation became clear. A basket had fallen. Several fruits were damaged. The trader blamed the young woman. The young woman denied responsibility. The argument grew louder. The crowd grew larger. Still nobody stepped forward. Mama Grace looked around. Faces everywhere. Watching. Waiting.
silent.
The memory hit her immediately. The bank. The floor. The humiliation. The spectators. Silence. Her heart tightened. Not again. She stepped forward. "My children." The argument paused. Both women turned. "What happened?" The trader immediately began explaining. The young woman did the same, each telling a different version. Mama Grace listened patiently. Then she noticed something. A small boy standing nearby, watching nervously. She smiled at him. "My son." The boy looked startled. "Yes. You were here?" He nodded. "Did you see what happened?" The crowd became quiet. The boy hesitated, then spoke. The basket was already leaning. The market fell silent. The trader blinked. "What?" The boy pointed. The wood underneath was broken. People examined the stall. The support beam was cracked. The basket had been unstable before the young woman arrived. A murmur spread through. A murmur spread through the crowd. The trader's face changed. Embarrassment replaced anger. The young woman looked relieved. The truth had been simple. Very simple. But nobody had bothered to look for it. Mama Grace smiled gently. "Sometimes we judge before we understand." The crowd listened. No speeches. No drama. Just a simple reminder. Yet several people nodded. Because they understood. That evening, Daniel visited. As usual. As always. He found his mother shelling groundnuts. Again. He laughed. "One day those groundnuts will become more famous than me. They already are." Daniel sat beside her. "You went to the market today." "Who told you?" "The entire neighborhood." Mama Grace laughed loudly. "People like talking." "Apparently." She explained what happened. Daniel listened carefully. When she finished, he shook his head. The crowd watched without helping. "Yes." "Why?" Mama Grace smiled sadly. "Because helping creates responsibility." Daniel considered that. "Watching is easier." Exactly. The answer bothered him. Because it felt true. Many people disliked injustice. Yet fewer people challenged it. Not because they supported wrongdoing. Because involvement felt uncomfortable. Risky. Inconvenient. "Mommy." "Yes." "Do you think people are naturally good?" The question surprised her. She thought for a moment. Then answered carefully. "I think people are capable of good." Daniel waited. "And bad." "That's not very helpful." She laughed. "It is honest." He smiled. "Fair enough." She continued. "The difference often comes from choice." Choice. Yes. The choice to care. The choice to ignore. The choice to speak. The choice to remain silent. Daniel nodded slowly. Choices. Simple. Daily. Powerful. Across town, Sandra finally received an interview invitation. A medium-sized financial company. Nothing prestigious. Nothing glamorous. Just an opportunity. The night before the interview, she barely slept. Fear mixed with hope. She needed work. Desperately. The following morning she arrived early. Very early. 20 minutes before her scheduled time. While waiting in reception, she noticed an elderly man standing nearby. He appeared confused. The receptionist looked busy. The man held several documents. He kept glancing around uncertainly. Sandra recognized the expression immediately. She had seen it countless times. Customers unsure where to go, unsure what to do. Months earlier, she might have ignored him. Today she stood. "Sir." The man looked up. "Can I help you?" Relief flooded his face. "Please." She spent 5 minutes helping organize his paperwork. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing difficult. When she finished, the old man smiled warmly. "Thank you, my daughter." Sandra returned to her seat. Moments later a voice spoke behind her. "Interesting." She turned. A woman stood there. Professional. Well-dressed. Confident. "Excuse me?" The woman smiled. "I've been watching." Sandra blinked. The woman extended her hand. "I'm the hiring manager." Sandra's eyes widened. The interview had started before she realized it. Not with questions. Not with credentials. With character. The manager smiled. "Come inside." At the pharmacy, Musa continued rebuilding his life. The work remained difficult. The pay remained modest. Yet something inside him had changed. One afternoon, an elderly customer entered carrying several bags. Without being asked, Musa helped. The following day, he assisted a woman struggling with a heavy package. The day after that, He helped a customer locate medicine for an elderly relative. Small acts, repeated daily. Eventually, the pharmacy owner noticed. One evening, he called Musa into the office. I want to ask you something. Yes, sir? Why do customers keep mentioning your name? Musa looked confused. I don't understand. The owner opened a notebook. 3 compliments this week. What? 5 last week. Musa blinked. The owner smiled. People say you treat them well. For a moment, Musa didn't know what to say. Because months earlier, customers had feared him. Now they appreciated him. The difference felt almost unbelievable. The owner leaned back. I have decided something. Sir, I want you supervising customer assistants. Musa stared. Me? Yes. The owner nodded. You understand something many people don't. What? The owner smiled. People remember how you make them feel. The words stayed with Musa long after he left the office. Because they were true. Very true. A few weeks later, Daniel launched a new initiative across every branch. Not a policy. Not a disciplinary system. Not a compliance procedure. A simple question. One question every employee would ask themselves at the end of each day. Who did I help today? Nothing more. Nothing less. Many executives considered it unnecessary. Too simple. Too emotional. Too difficult to measure. Daniel disagreed. Because some of the most important things in life were difficult to measure.
Trust.
Respect.